Emily Stanton's life changed forever the day her husband Tom got what was supposed to be a routine flu shot at a neighborhood HOA event. Just 12 hours later, he was in a coma. The man who administered the injection wasn't a doctor. Not even close. He was a fraud. A fake medic running illegal drug trials on unsuspecting senior citizens. And when the system failed to act, Emily did what no one else would. She launched her own investigation and uncovered a hidden network that was never meant to be found. But nothing could prepare her for the twist that would turn this nightmare into a relentless pursuit of justice. And against all odds, justice won. Paradise Creek, Arizona was the kind of place that looked like it had been pulled straight from a real estate brochure. Wide, spotless streets, freshly trimmed hedges, and a neighborhood Facebook group that debated things like the proper color of Christmas lights. Everything about the community was meticulously normal, safe, predictable, boring in the best way possible. Every Sunday, the HOA met at the clubhouse, not because there were pressing issues, but because people like to feel involved. They brought cookies, made coffee, chatted about pest control, and who'd parked too far over the line. It was all comfortingly mundane. Emily and Tom had lived there for 6 years. He had retired from the fire department and quickly become the guy who mowed lawns for widows and fixed leaky hoses without being asked. Everyone knew and trusted Tom. That's what made what happened next so unthinkable. It began with a casual announcement at one of those Sunday HOA meetings. "Just a heads up," said Karen Lemley, the HOA chairwoman, flipping through papers. "We've been approved for a community vaccination drive. Quick and easy flu shots for anyone over 50. Completely voluntary, of course." She added that it was part of a pilot program the city was testing in a few trusted neighborhoods. The man administering the shots, she said, was named Josh Caldwell, a licensed medical volunteer who worked with a public health initiative. He'd be set up in the clubhouse on Thursday. No one asked for credentials. No one questioned it. Josh arrived exactly on time. He looked the part, late 30s or early 40s, clean-cut-in, freshly pressed pale blue scrubs with a shiny laminated ID badge. He smiled easily, shook hands warmly, and wheeled in a sleek hard-shell medical case that locked with a satisfying click. He even brought paperwork, consent forms, disclaimers, brochures stamped with official-looking logos. His tone was calm and clinical, peppered with terms like herd immunity and low-risk dose control. People felt reassured. Tom went first. Emily stood beside him as he rolled up his sleeve, chatting with Josh about the weather. "Just a pinch," Josh said smoothly. Tom winced, then chuckled. "That's nothing compared to getting hit with a fire hose." They laughed. Then Josh moved on to the next neighbor and the next, working efficiently and confidently. No one questioned who he was or what he was really doing. Why would they? He had the badge, the scrubs, the smile, and in Paradise Creek, bad things didn't happen. Not like this. But by that night, everything changed. Started with a headache. Tom rubbed his temples at dinner, brushing it off as too much sun. Probably dehydration, he said. By midnight, he was vomiting. By 2 a.m., he could barely speak. At 3:14 a.m., Emily found him on the kitchen floor, his body twitching, his eyes half open. She screamed. His lips were blue, his breathing shallow, then silent. She doesn't remember dialing 911, just the operator's voice. Asterisk, stay calm. Help is on the way. Mercy General was chaos. Red lights, boots on tile, stretchers, snapping gloves, antiseptic The ER team swarmed like bees running toxicology, hooking him up to machines Emily had only seen on TV. Monitors beeped. Numbers flashed, but none of it made sense except one zero response. A neurologist finally delivered the blow. "We've stabilized him," he said, "but he's unresponsive. His brain activity is extremely low." Emily's lips trembled. "What do you mean? Unresponsive?" "He's in a coma, Mrs. Stanton." It didn't make sense. This was Tom. Her Tom. He'd been jogging 3 days ago, carrying groceries for Mrs. Ramsey. Yesterday, cracking jokes at dinner. Hours ago. Now he was gone. The doctors reviewed everything. His vitals, medical history, diet. The only new variable was the injection. "The flu vaccine?" Emily asked. The toxicologist looked at her carefully. "It wasn't a flu vaccine." Emily froze. "We ran the compound through our registry," he continued. "It's not listed, not FDA approved, not even in international clinical databases. Whatever your husband received, it's not on the market." Her mind reeled. Then, what was it? "It's neuroreactive," he said. "A stimulant or enhancer most likely, but at toxic concentrations it crosses the blood-brain barrier, causing what we're seeing now." Emily's voice cracked. "Where's the guy who gave it to him?" "The medic from the HOA." More silence. A long glance exchange. "There's no official record of a Joshua Caldwell working with any public health initiative in Arizona," one of them finally said, "but he had a badge. Paperwork, the HOA brought him in. The badge was counterfeit. The documents were printed out of Staples. The company name doesn't exist." Emily felt the floor vanish beneath her. "What are you saying?" she whispered. The doctor didn't flinch. "I'm saying whoever injected your husband is not who he claimed to be." Josh Caldwell had vanished. His phone was disconnected. No address, no employer, no trace, just a name on a sign-in sheet and a man on a gurney fighting for his life. Emily stood at the ICU window trying to make sense of the past 11 hours. Her husband had been joking minutes before the shot. Now he was trapped inside his own body. And no one, not the doctors, not the HOA, not the police, could explain what was coursing through his veins. But one thing was clear. This wasn't just a medical accident. It was something far worse. And Emily was going to find out. What? The next morning, she walked into the HOA office like it was a crime scene. Same folding chairs, same stale coffee smell, same bulletin board. But something had changed. Something was off. She asked to see Josh Caldwell's registration paperwork, volunteer forms, program approval, anything. The assistant smiled, paused, and shrugged. "There's nothing on file," she said lazily, tapping her keyboard. "Check again," Emily said, her voice like steel. The woman looked nervous, clicked a few more times, then turned the screen toward her. Blank. No entries, no uploads, no digital trail. Emily called Josh's number. Disconnected. She emailed. Bounced back in seconds. The health department. Never heard of him. When she asked Hawk Air Karen Lumley which clinic sponsored the program, Karen blinked. "Oh, he said it was a city partnership. Some new initiative. He had a badge." "You never verified," Emily said. Karen's smile tightened. "He was vouched for. He seemed professional. We assumed he was legit." Emily's voice dropped. "My husband is in a coma." Karen's face shifted. Sympathy. Too little and far too late. We had no way of knowing Emily. Emily stepped closer. "You let a stranger inject chemicals into our neighbors without verifying a single credential." A long pause. Then Karen said, "This isn't the time to point But Emily had already made up her mind. The time for pointing fingers had passed. Now it was time to dig. Emily stared at Karen, face blank. Fingers curled tightly at her sides. Her heart pounded like a war drum, but she said nothing. Not yet. The police weren't much better. A plainclothes detective met her in the hospital cafeteria, clipboard in hand and a tone far too casual. We're opening a file, he said. But there's no evidence of foul play. We're treating it as a possible medical accident. Accident, Emily repeated, stunned. Your husband signed a consent form. So did the others. There's no assault, no weapon, no direct threat. Emily could barely believe what she was hearing. He was injected with something unregulated, illegally, by a man with no medical license, and now he's dying. Detective nodded as if she were describing a minor fender bender. We'll keep digging, he said. But unless we get something concrete, there's not much we can do. He stood and left her sitting there, her hands clenched around a paper coffee cup gone cold. Back at home, Emily went to the folder where she kept HOA newsletters and meeting notes. She searched every document, every list, every email. Josh Caldwell's name wasn't in any of them. Not on a sign-in sheet, not in a mailing list. Even Karen's original announcement about the vaccine event was missing from the email archive. It was like someone had erased him cleanly, deliberately, as if he'd never existed. That's when something inside her cracked, not like glass, but like ice under pressure. She didn't cry, scream, or beg. She sat at her kitchen table, the same place where Tom had laughed 2 nights earlier, and stared into the void that used to be their life. Then slowly, she opened her laptop. She created a new folder and labeled it in all caps. Find him. If no one else was going to bring him to justice, she would. Not for the neighborhood, not for the HOA, not for a system that looked the other way. For Tom, the days blurred. At first, Emily counted them: Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Then weeks. Week 1, week 2. Eventually, she stopped counting altogether. The hospital room became her world. She knew the rhythm of the machines like a song she hated but couldn't forget. She memorized the twitch of Tom's eyelids, the rise of his chest, the dry skin around his lips. All signals, all signs of nothing. Nurses rotated, shifts changed, the flowers wilted, but Tom stayed the same. Motionless, silent somewhere far away. The doctors began to speak in unbearable terms. Prolonged vegetative state. Minimal response. Family decisions. Emily nodded like she understood, then returned to his bedside and held his hand, whispering the same thing every night. I'm still here. I haven't stopped. Outside those walls, the world kept spinning. The HOA resumed its routines. Trimming hedges, issuing parking fines, planning the next community barbecue. At the last meeting Emily attended, someone complained about her front yard looking untended. No one mentioned Tom. No one asked how she was holding up. She called lawyers. Some listened politely before declining. Others never called back. You don't have a case without a perpetrator. One told her, we need a name, a real identity, something actionable. You can't sue thin air, Mrs. Stanton. She almost laughed. Asterisk, almost. Asterisk. And then it hit her. Quietly. At 2:13 a.m., beneath the cold fluorescent lights of Tom's hospital room, a single sharp thought sliced through the fog. No one is coming. Not the police. Not the law, not God. The world had filed her grief under miscellaneous and moved on. She hadn't cried in days. Crying suggested something new. A fresh wave of emotion. But this wasn't a wave. This was ocean. Floor. Cold, still, and crushing. And, under that pressure, something inside her began to harden. She opened the folder on her phone. Find him. She added. A new note. No help coming. Start. Tracking from scratch. Asterisk she didn't know how to hunt a man who didn't exist. She didn't know how to chase a ghost. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty. If no one else was going to bring him down, she would. Emily didn't wake up one morning and decide to be a detective. It wasn't cinematic. There was no music, no montage, just silence, rage, and time. Too much time. She began with what little she had. Memory and obsession. She wrote down every detail she could remember about Josh Caldwell. His voice, his posture, his shoes, the way he held the syringe, the brand of his scrubs, the logo on his fake badge. She searched every known clinic and registry. Nothing. Then she turned outward. She requested the community center security footage from the morning Josh arrived. The HOA didn't want to release it. She threatened legal action. They caved. She spent 6 hours scrubbing through grainy, low-resolution video frame by frame. Josh appeared, wheeling in his sleek medical case. Then a van gray unmarked Arizona plates. He loaded a large white cooler into the back with both hands, glanced at his phone, and drove off. Emily paused, rewound, played it again. There, just for a moment, a reflection. In the glass door enough to make out the license plate. She wrote it down in all caps, her hand trembling. The DMV wouldn't release any information. She expected that. So, she did what the police wouldn't. She found someone who could help. His name was David Crenshaw, a retired homicide investigator her cousin and Mason knew through a friend. Freelance now. Not cheap but not heartless either. She gave him everything. The video, the story, the blood report, the hospital data. He didn't say much, just nodded. You understand? He said quietly. This guy knew what he was doing. I don't care, Emily replied. Find him anyway. Crenshaw worked fast. The plate traced back to a rental company near Tempe. Fake name, fake ID, paid in cash. Another dead end. Except for one thing. GPS history. Ben had stopped for over 2 hours at a self-as storage facility outside Phoenix. No security footage. The system had been offline that week due to electrical repairs, but the gate code matched the rental time. It was enough. Crenshaw made a call. They went together. Unit number 47. A corrugated steel door with the smell of bleach and stale plastic. Behind it, the air wasn't dusty. It was clinical. Emily hesitated only for a second before Crenshaw rolled the door open. Inside was chaos masquerading as order. Metal shelves stacked with disposable gloves, gauze, cooling packs, dozens of empty glass vials and used syringes, hundreds maybe. In the back, under a torn blue tarp, a red biohazard bag sat half open, revealing labeled containers with instructions written in a language she didn't recognize. Emily stepped forward, handshaking. One of the labels was printed in Mandarin. Crenshaw lifted a small glass vial, held it up to the light, then looked at her. You should sit down. 2 days later, the toxicology lab confirmed it. The compound matched the substance found in Tom's bloodstream. Same molecular structure, same anomalies, same batch. Number faintly visible on the rim. It wasn't a flu vaccine. It wasn't anything legal. It was an unregistered neuroagent, experimental, dangerous, and possibly tied to banned overseas testing. Josh Caldwell had been storing it like leftovers in a $160 a month storage unit on the edge of nowhere. Emily stood in the parking lot as the metal door slid shut again. The sun beat down on her shoulders. Her mouth was dry. Her husband had nearly died from something stored between a rusted-out motorcycle and an old mattress. Her pulse pounded in her throat. This wasn't fraud. This wasn't carelessness. This was calculated. And if Josh Caldwell thought he could vanish, Emily Stannon had just proven he'd left a trail, and she was following it. The email came at 3:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. Subject line: confirmed match. Emily opened the PDF with trembling hands. She already knew what it would say. The drug wasn't a vaccine. It was an experimental neuroenhancer classified as prohibited in human trials after a series of black site tests overseas. Known side effects included disorientation, memory loss, seizures, cognitive shutdown, and in extreme cases, coma. Just like Tom, the compound had been flagged months earlier by an ethics committee in Berlin. The research disappeared. The funding was pulled. No one was supposed to be producing it, let alone injecting it. Josh Caldwell hadn't just been a fraud. He was a rogue experimenter, and his lab had been her neighborhood. Emily stared at the screen for a full minute. Then she stood up, walked into the bathroom, and vomited. It was the last time she allowed herself to break. By that evening, she had sent the toxicology report to every journalist she could find. Local news, Reddit, forums, Facebook groups for HOA. Accountability. No one responded at first. Then she made a video. It was simple. No music, no edits, just her face, her voice, and a caption that read, asterisk, my husband is in a coma because a fake medic used our neighborhood as a testing ground. Here's the proof. She held up the vial, then the lab report, then a photo of Tom smiling at a backyard barbecue. She expected a few hundred views, maybe a handful of shares. She went to sleep. By morning, the video had over 4 million views. Local news picked it up first. Asterisk. Paradise Creek scandal woman claims fake medic caused husband's coma. Asterisk. Then came national headlines, podcasters, and a wave of public outrage. The story evolved with each repost. Suburban. Vaccine scam leaves man in coma. HOA. Trusted fraud with dangerous drug testing. Experimental drug trial. Masquerades as flu clinic. Emily watched it all unfold like a storm she had summoned with her own voice. Then people started reaching out from other neighborhoods, other families. One woman said her mother had collapsed after a similar free flu shot in a nearby county. A man remembered Josh from an event in Nevada. The map grew larger, the web darker, and the police finally couldn't look away anymore. 1 week later, there was a knock on her door. Crenshaw answered first, then waved her over, phone in hand. They found him, he said. Josh Caldwell, if that was even his real name, had checked into a motel outside Reno under a fake ID. He was carrying 3 burner phones, a backpack full of cash, and a printed boarding pass for a red-eye flight to Colombia. A cleaning lady had found his injection kit in the motel bathtub used recently. Emily stood on her porch as the sun dipped behind the trees, painting the world in shades of red. He had almost made it, almost. But now he was in custody. The first domino had finally fallen. She went inside, closed her laptop, and opened a new folder. Phase 2, the trial. Because stopping him wasn't enough. She wanted him to answer publicly, completely, for everyone he hurt. Josh Caldwell didn't resist arrest. No panic, no struggle. He watched the officers cuff him like someone watching the rain through a window. Distant, unaffected. He gave his name, Signed the papers, sat through the interview like it was routine. No lawyer, no emotion. When asked about the drug, he was disturbingly clear. Prototype stimulant, early-stage neuron modulator abandoned in Europe after regulatory issues. So you continued testing it anyway? They asked privately. Real data, real conditions. You mean real people? Josh didn't flinch. Yes. Volunteers, seniors, suburban targets. HOA neighborhoods have low oversight and high compliance. Ideal population. Segment. Emily listened to the interview. Transcript in the courthouse hallway. Fists clenched at her sides. She had expected horror, maybe denial, not this. Not indifference. When they asked him, what happened to Tom Stanton, Josh paused. Unexpected neurological reaction. Unfortunate, but a valuable outlier. He's in a coma. Another pause. Yes, not ideal, but data is data. Josh Caldwell was charged with practicing medicine without a license, reckless endangerment, distribution of an unapproved substance, attempted manslaughter, and multiple other counts. The judge called his action systemic predation. Bail was denied. The trial was set for fall, but no matter how many charges were read, no matter how many headlines ran the story, one thing didn't change. Tom was still unconscious. Emily left the courthouse without speaking to reporters. Later, in the stillness of the hospital room, she whispered to her husband, he's behind bars now, but it's not over. Not until you come back. No answer. Just the steady rhythm of the monitors. Just the silence of someone still waiting. It happened on a Tuesday. The kind no one remembers. Gray sky, lukewarm cafeteria. Coffee. The same nurse shift. Emily sat beside Tom's bed, half asleep, her thumb tracing the seam of his blanket for the 100th time. She was reading aloud, not because she thought he could hear, but because the silence made the room colder. Then she saw it. His index finger, right hand, it moved. Not a reflex, not a spasm, a twitch. Controlled, intentional. She blinked. Waited. It happened again. The book hit the floor. Emily shot up, leaned over him, eyes wide, mouth open, hands frozen in midair. Tom. His eyelids didn't flutter. His lips didn't part, but the finger moved again. Just once, then stilled. She screamed for a nurse. Within minutes, the room filled. Vitals checked. Reflex tests repeated. Light shone into his pupils. One doctor raised an eyebrow. Well, that's something. An hour later, it was official. Slight neural response. Minimal. Inconsistent. But there Emily sat that night, her hands wrapped around his, tears falling silently down her face. She didn't care how long it would take. Didn't care what the chart said. Didn't care how cautious the optimism was. He was still in there. Still fighting. And now so was she. Not out of anger or desperation, but because of that tiny movement, that flicker of defiance against the void. The machines kept humming. The nurses came and went. But Emily never looked away from his hand again. Emily never planned to become a public speaker. She hated microphones. Crowds drained her. She used to joke that Tom did all the talking in their marriage. But life had other plans. It started with one podcast, local, about HOA abuse and neighborhood politics. She spoke softly, carefully. She didn't tell the story as a victim, but as someone who refused to disappear. People listened. Then came more interviews, investigative reporters, health conferences, victims panels. She testified in front of lawmakers in Arizona, holding the vial Josh had used, holding up photos of Tom with kids from the neighborhood on vacation, in the hospital, still surrounded by machines. All it takes is one man with a fake badge, she told the Senate subcommittee, and a system too polite to ask questions. Her voice didn't tremble anymore. In April, Arizona passed the Stanton Act, a bipartisan bill requiring full identity and licensing verification for any medical professional working in public or community settings. Within months, other states followed rewrote policies. Event screenings became standard in quiet neighborhoods across the country. People started asking questions they never would have thought to ask before. Emily launched a nonprofit, the Verity Foundation, to support families affected by unlicensed medical intervention. They offered legal guidance, mental health support, and training for HOA boards. Her kitchen table, once buried under grief, became a war room for education and accountability. The world noticed, not because she shouted louder than anyone else, but because she never stopped speaking, even when no one seemed to hear. But the most important moment didn't happen on a stage or in a courtroom. It came on another quiet Tuesday morning in the same hospital room, the same chair by the window. She was holding Tom's hand, speaking softly, recapping an article she just read aloud. They passed it, Tom. The law. It's named after you. Can you believe that? She paused. His fingers moved. Not a twitch. Not reflex. A squeeze. Her breath caught. She looked down. His hand tightened around hers. Slow, deliberate. And Emily knew he was coming back. Not all at once. Not with fireworks, but the way all real miracles begin. Quietly, patiently, with love that never let